One of the reasons Frieren stands out from other shows is how it handles its main group of villains. No sad backstories, no justifications, no ifs, ands, or buts. These are the enemies of all sentient beings who must be destroyed on sight. Or are they? Hello Comrade, my name is Mahis. Come, get yourself a beverage and sit down with me. We got a whole new species to understand. With how the show and the granny herself introduces demons, there is little room for any doubt or skepticism towards this life form in regards to what they do and how the world should react. However, even though the answer is pretty obvious, the way you get there is rather complex because we need to consider biology, the fact that we as humans behave similarly in a lot of ways, and the morality of condoning an entire population. Let me put my smart pants on to become a Timu version of David Attenborough and give you a small rundown of these fantasy creatures based on very limited canon information as well as my own logical assumptions that fill the missing gaps. Demons are predators. They're neither good nor bad, they simply are, and we just happen to be their food source, which makes them bad to us. But what exactly does that mean? If we're just nutrients for them, how often and how many do they need to eat in order to survive? They don't require humans to live for an extended period of time, like we saw when Himmel spared the girl and she ended up getting by just fine on a regular human diet. So maybe they need to eat us in order to evolve or get stronger? That would make more sense, since they're all about mana and the Sapiens species might be the only ones to have this nutritional value. To add to that, demons are the only monsters to have souls, just like humans, dwarves, or elves. Maybe that is the connection, otherwise a Frieren's demon is just an advanced version of a pure titan, with the difference of being mana dependent as opposed to solar powered. Hold on to this thought, as it will come up later in the video. Eating habits are only a third of what defines a living organism. Okay, before I get rightfully destroyed in the comments, this is a Joe's Mama-sized topic in the science community, and I, in accordance with my cerebral capabilities, will use the most basic definition. A living organism is considered such when it has autonomous reproduction, growth, and metabolism. We don't need to delve into the downside of consuming food, so consider metabolism covered. But what about multiplying without a calculator? We're told that they abandon their young, which indirectly means that they make more of themselves. How? I'm sure there's plenty of visual materials on certain sites dedicated to this particular research, yet my question is, how do they get to that point? Animals have seasons when the new generation is conceived, and they do so thanks to their programming without any semblance of romance. Some exceptions apply, like swans for example, who do form lifelong bonds which at least resemble romantic love. Demons don't have that at all, so there should be a mechanism that tells them, it's that time of the year, chop chop, don't want the species to go extinct. Is it age, maybe some kind of mana compatibility? Do they even have the facilities? Or is just some Protoss bullshit where two willing individuals share their DNA/psi energy externally, which creates a new organism similar to an Archon merging, but on a smaller scale and without destroying the participating persons? That is very unclear. My initial thought was that they somehow manifest from concentrated mana, given that they evaporate when they die, and I no longer think that's true in this case, because in order to abandon their young, they need to make that young first, implying some direct participation of the adults. Or an adult, if they have a form of asexual reproduction. The third part of the definition is growth. This one is rather simple, as we already know that they're akin to vampires who go stronger with age and likely do so by accumulating mana naturally or by consuming mana-rich species like humans, dwarves, and elves. What's not simple is their defining characteristic of being able to use people speak, which is so advanced it's their primary method of both hunting and communicating. How exactly do they learn it if they're abandoned by their parents? It has to be in their genetic code or something related to their magic proficiency, where they by default possess a spell that allows them to learn speech quickly just by observing. It wouldn't be that big of a stretch, since Lini had an extended version of this ability that imitated someone's fighting style by means of simple observation. Also, it's probably worth discussing their Sapiens, as it definitely plays a part in this moral dilemma people have about Frieren's demons and many others. On one hand, I struggle to call demons from Demon Slayer human level sentient because their consciousness is heavily altered by Muzan, who blocks most of their feelings/emotions, making them slaves to their desire of munching on humans. But on the other hand, Rui, Akaze and the like seem to maintain some control over their mind and decision making. The difference, I suppose, is that demons in Frieren don't really need human calories to survive, so they don't necessarily hunt us out of, well, necessity. Moreover, they are very much self-aware, as proven by Lugner admitting that the Slayer's description was correct. They know exactly what they're doing, and this definitely tips the scales towards no mercy. However, are they that much different from us? Like, the fundamental definition of demons provided by Flama can be applied to humans too, since hunters began mimicking bird or deer calls to lure them into a false sense of security thousands of years ago. It's definitely not that sophisticated and only distracts an animal for a brief moment, yet it's almost identical to the demon girl calling out for a mother. She didn't know what that combination of sounds meant exactly and only used it because it has the desired effect of stun-locking naive humans. That's hunting 101 if you ask me. Camouflage, bait and shoot. So who are we to judge this life form for doing the exact same thing? Even the argument of demons being genocidal is not going to fly, because look at what we did to bison and many other species that got hunted next to or into extinction. Some of them weren't even for the purposes of food. Grinding rhino horns into dick pills certainly didn't help their population, and it has nothing to do with our survival. Well, this is where we get into what makes us different from them. We have the capacity as a collective to say poachers can suck an elephant's cock and, in my opinion, should be punished way more severely. There are limits we impose on hunting and even farming animals, with varying degrees of success, that much I admit, but even an attempt of doing that is already going way beyond what demons can imagine. No other species does that. If given an opportunity, they will consume all their food supplies regardless of how it will affect them, because they don't have the brain power to consider this possibility. Good thing that it can't really happen because of how nature is balancing itself. When a certain food becomes scarce, a chunk of those who eat it die off, which allows for the groceries to be restocked and everything goes back to normal until we ruin it. Demons do have the smarts, and this is why I wonder, what's the point of massacring all your prey, since it will mean your eventual extinction? Oh, and speaking of intelligence, they aren't as clever as they appear because they often let arrogance get in the way of their deductive reasoning or think too linearly without considering a multitude of factors. Two prime examples here. 1. Almost every demon heavily underestimates Frieren, even knowing who she is. Like, Aura didn't even stop to consider how this woman, who only had 100 years of mana training, went on to get a title The Slayer and defeat the Demon King. Sure, she probably gives more credit to Himmel than some lower class mage, yet do you really think someone as weak as her would have survived the battle with the biggest of bads this world has ever seen? Lugner was falling into the same trap way too easily as well. You're fighting as some 15-20-year-old who is holding her own rather well, not to mention the time she almost one-shot you, bypassing Linia's magic detection. Doesn't it feel odd that her small supply of mana is depleting too slowly? He should have noticed these abnormalities and switched to a more defensive approach until he figures out what's going on, but he was too preoccupied working his own shaft. Number 2 is the girl from the village. I understand that to her it makes sense that if someone lost their child, giving them a replacement remedies the situation, considering the father no longer has any complaints. Except that it doesn't take a triple-digit IQ to realize that causing damage to the community you live in equals bad time for you, as you have just escaped a similar situation by the skin of your teeth. I'm not even going to delve into rationalizing how some people spending more time with certain individuals probably means they value them more plain mathematically, or that there is a party of adventurers hanging around, one of whom is extremely hostile to you. It's the fact that she herself would have retaliated if somebody wronged her, which means others are likely to do so too. Don't get me wrong, demons are very cunning when it comes to their primary task of preying on humans, but other than that, they're surprisingly short-sighted and dense. The answer to all these questions is in every definition of demons provided by the story. They are monsters who learned human speech. Monsters, not animals. In the world of Frieren, just like in many other stories, monsters are a separate kingdom and are different from animals, similar to how fungi are different from plants. Most of the time, it's a type of magical creature made from mana or some other supernatural resource, and the only reason for their existence is being a source of XP for the main character. Alright, jokes aside, their primary purpose is to destroy life in one way or another, and this is why I ask you to hold on to that thought, since pure titans are exactly that. Their only motivation is to eat humans, no regard for anything else, including their own life, which is why I call demons an advanced version of them. Neither keen intellect, human-like proportions, or the ability to speak changed their core man-eating concept, only concealed it. They're still driven by that insatiable desire, and now, with the power of self-control, they can act more strategically to achieve their goal of consuming all sentient species. If you think pure titans weren't the best example due to them seeking out titan shifters to restore their humanity, I have another one that takes the stereotypical monster to the extreme: Grimm from Ruby. They were created exclusively to destroy, and are particularly fond of doing so to people as well as their creations. There are no other functions they serve, like in the case of wasps, at least they provide food for some other animals. But Grimm doesn't benefit anyone except their master Salem, who also wants nothing more than stopping the world from turning. Yeah, for those who are wondering, her goal is to bring all 4 relics together, summon the gods, and let them see how fucked up the place is, so they destroy this world for good, and her by extension, as promised way back when. These creatures don't feel or want anything other than total annihilation, and that's precisely why they're being hunted with extreme prejudice. Back to the demons. They also don't provide any benefits to the ecosystem, and as such can be considered pests in the pure sense, which only adds to the no mercy mindset. Frieren is not a hypocrite. I kinda thought she was, cause we saw her munching on meat no problem, but this is different, courtesy of what we've just discussed. In simple terms, her hostility to demons is basic evolutionary self-preservation any species would develop after being exposed to a predator enough times. We're the same way, and even though we don't have many natural predators anymore, once there is something that actively hunts us, we don't care about what it is, we try to destroy it faster than it destroys us. Take polar bears. They're one of only like 5 species on the planet who consider humans as food, and the only reason they're not completely wiped out yet is that they live too far from us. The counter-argument would be grizzly bears, who will very much snack on humans every once in a while, yet the difference is that they don't purposefully go out to hunt us. It's actually very rare for grizzly to eat a human considering the number of encounters, so we don't recognize this species as openly hostile. However, if there is a specimen who tried human flesh, whether it's a tiger or a common dog, it will be put down without hesitation as quickly as possible. You know what? They don't even need to perform the act of harming humans to be sentenced for termination. Harambe won't let me lie. So saying Frieren is bad for wanting to slay all demons is rather hypocritical. It's not that they are dangerous in some cases or are even more likely to kill us than not. It's the fact that they are 100% going to. The question is when or how. Next, I'd like to tackle the issue of their society. They don't have one, which is weird for a life form with such intellect. Take orcas. They have language, culture, and even trends as evident by some pods attacking boats just for lols. Most intelligent animals, even predators, form groups in order to increase their chances of survival, yet demons generally avoid collaboration unless borderline forced by a formidable individual like the Demon King. And even when they're working together, it doesn't seem like they share any skills or knowledge to improve their odds, as Qual was the only demon to use Zoltrak, notwithstanding its incredible use on the battlefield. On top of that, given their lack of feelings, they don't care about their fellow demons in the traditional sense and are likely to step on each other's toes or even commit murder to achieve their own goals. You could say many predators, like the grizzly I mentioned, also don't take kindly to their own and only tolerate each other when food is abundant. Sure, that is fair to say, but that's not always the case, since there is a reason why we have an expression called mama bear. They raise their young and, unlike demons, are extremely protective, so for a brief period, even bears express care. Oh, and don't you dare forget about stories like one of Baloo, Leo, and Shere Khan. A bear, a lion, and a tiger got rescued from some basement, then sent off to different sanctuaries, only to be brought back together because they became sad and ill as they were missing their friends that much. Never in their life would a demon share a bond like that, so if they don't care about the well-being of their kin, it stands to reason that we shouldn't either. It's now the third strike for the demon kind, which in my book means no mercy is the way to go. But just in case, because we are compassionate Homo sapiens sapiens, I'll cover one more aspect of vilifying an entire species. Let's go a step further and assume that there will be at some point a demon who is actually good, or at least doesn't eat humans. Maybe they are too deep into magic research and don't want to be bothered, or simply choose vegan options, it doesn't matter. The sad truth is that it wouldn't make a difference, because just like a few bad apples don't make the entire box bad, the opposite is true as well. There are many examples of this in fiction, and one I immediately think of is Goris, a friendly talking scholar Deathclaw from Fallout 2. He means no harm except to the Enclave, and is genuinely interested in learning about this world as opposed to on-sighting people, yet it's inconsequential to other Deathclaws who will happily snack on unsuspecting wastelanders. It just goes back to survival. We can't risk assuming a demon might be good and losing our loved ones as a result on a ridiculously low chance of that being true. They exploit our morality as, again, we are the only species who question this kind of stuff, and it's precisely why we should do our best not to fall for it. There is no discussion about whether demons are bad or not. The fact that this girl wholeheartedly believed that offering another man's child to a grieving mother is going to work proves that they are fundamentally incompatible with us, so in the name of the Emperor and all our fallen comrades, slay Queen, slay. Iwasai. Mahis, not making a single Doom reference into the microphone. Have a great whatever time of the day you have. Until next time, cheers. A lion and a tiger got rescued from Почему это так тяжело сказать? Got rescued from some basement.